So, good morning. We are back as the first Sunday of the month to the study of the book Action and Reaction that we started last month. We went through chapter 1, and I want just to give overview of what we study on chapter 1. So it is in a lecture with Instructor Druso, the director of Mansion of Peace. Mansão Paz is Mansion of Peace. We learn what is Mansão Paz, which is an institution situated in the lower zones to rescue suffering spirits. And Andre Luiz is there, and they witness a violent storm in the lower zones region, which drags along crowds of suffering spirits. They discuss if it was not possible to shelter all of them in the relief institution directed by Druso. Druso explains that it's not possible because they would only cause disturbance. They were not ready to be helped. Do these unfortunate spirits have awareness of what is happening to them? And Druso talks a little bit about them. Not really. Most of them do not understand the situation they are in. They are immersed in anger and revolt, but they do not remain indefinitely in this terrible state of imbalance. They end up opening windows of assistance, and they are assisted eventually. Then they ask if it is possible for this spirit, it's Hilario that asks Druso if it's possible for the spirit journey of purification and in this dark and suffering pain, is it enough to settle the debts of conscience? Druso explains that it's not. They need the reincarnation. They need to actively clear their debts. And Hilario wonders if what would happen if incarnate souls could die in their bodies for a few days each year, not in the same way as a physical sleep, but with full awareness of the life that awaits them. And then they discuss who are these discarnate spirits living in these shadowy regions of the lower zones, if they are common delinquents or criminals accused of great faults, if we would find primitive beings similar to our earthly indigenous people. And Druso explains, no, this is really spirits that are guilty and especially with a guilty conscience. And then they go over with how did Instructor Druso reach the position of director of Mansão Paz on Mansion of Peace, and he explains he went there through all the different work attributions there, started in a very low functions and reached the position of director. So that was what we discussed on chapter 1. And now we are going to start chapter 2. And I'll ask Zoraida to read for us.
Yes, of course. The instructor's comments. The room we entered was large and comfortable, but for the most part, the expressive group gathered there was unpleasant and sad. In the light of several lamps and from the broad platform on which we were seated with the instructor, we could observe the distorted faces that comprised the majority. Here and there were assistants and nurses, their spiritual condition easily distinguishable by the friendly manner in which they were encouraging the sufferers. I guessed that there were approximately 200 patients. More than 2/3 displayed facial deformities. Anyone who has ever visited a clinic for skin diseases and seen a group of the most acute patients can imagine what that gathering of silent and barely recognizable souls was like.
Noticing the almost total silence around us, I asked Druso about the storm raging outside.
The kind friend informed me that we were in one of the cenotal's inner rooms that had been properly outfitted with sound dampeners on the outside. As part of the director's team, Hilario and I were introduced to three admirable and gracious workers, Assistant Sila, Honorio, and Celestina, three of the most dedicated assessors in the administration of that assistance institution. Except for the usual greetings, there was no opportunity for further conversation. The instructor asked one of the patients to offer the opening prayer. We listened movingly, and then Druso began speaking naturally as if addressing a circle of friends. Brothers and sisters, we will continue our comments regarding courage. Please do not feel that I am separated from you by virtues I do not possess. To speak well and easily is very often a thorny duty in our mouths, forcing us into meditation and discipline. I too am here as a fellow spirit waiting to go back. The redemptive prison of the flesh beckons to us. That is because the objective of life works in us and with us in every way possible to guide us to perfection. If we curtail its impetus, we act contrary to the law and create affliction and suffering for ourselves.
On the physical plane, many of us believed that death would be the solution to our problems.
While many others considered themselves favorites of the infinite goodness for having embraced superficial postures in temples and churches. However, the journey from the grave has taught us an important new lesson. We are indissolubly tied to our own deeds. Our actions weave wings of freedom or shackles of imprisonment for our victory or our loss. We owe our fate to no one but ourselves. Nonetheless, if it is true that we find ourselves today among the ruins of our own deplorable deeds, it is also true that we are not without hope. Although the wisdom of our Heavenly Father does not forego justice when judging us, this same justice is not displayed without love. If we are victims of ourselves, we are also beneficiaries of divine tolerance, which reveals the sanctuaries of life so that we may expiate and solve, restore, and pay. In days gone by, either we wasted time instilling sentiments and thoughts in others than we did not desire for ourselves, or we sowed a vast crop of hatred and persecution through cruelty and pride. With such attitudes, however, to our harm, we attracted the disharmony and suffering that accompanied our lives like inexorable ghosts.
The past speaks to us with the shouts of a demanding creditor, piling before us the bitter fruits of what we have sown.
Hence the maladjustments and diseases that assault our minds, damaging our means of manifestations. We believe that the transition from the grave would be a miraculous cleansing that would free our spirit, but we awoke in the subtle body we have today with the ills we have nourished inside us. Consequently, our links to the past remain alive. The ties of misguided emotions and the chains of aversion still bind us to incarnate and discarnate fellow spirits, many of them presenting more serious and constraining imbalances than our own. As we nourish goals of regeneration and improvement, today we are beings awakening between hell and earth, as attuned to each other as we are to our deeds. We may find ourselves steeped in the dream of renewal and peace, aspiring to immersion in the higher life, but who can acquire respectability without first paying off their debts to the law? No one can move ahead without cleaning the debt they contracted. How can we walk the path of the angels with our feet shackled to the earth, where humans accuse us of wrongdoings, thereby immersing our memory in the darkness?
Thank you.
Welcome.
So, this mention of peace is a place, as we learned in the previous chapter, where suffering spirits that are immersed in their own problems, but ready to be assisted. So show the spirits that show some signs of regret, some signs of openness to receive assistance are taken. If we go back here, when he talks about what type of spirits are there, here on the last paragraph, earthly doctors, priests, nurses, and teachers find learning experiences and activities of the higher importance. The building that resembles a huge citadel that maintains departments of assistance and education. So these are the spirits. So it's clearly suffering spirits, struggling spirits. It's different from a place like Nos Solar, when the spirits that are taken there are already with awareness and understanding, of course, with all the imperfections and the consequences of their own struggles in the physical world, in their own path of evolution, but already in a state in a condition to be assisted and helped. You can see by the description here that Andre Luiz makes of the spirits that are in this large assembly, that they have distorted faces. They look like patients with skin diseases. So these 200 patients that are there are really patients in the very beginning stage of receiving treatment and assistance. They were, they may have been there for some time in a sleep state. They have been rescued from the lower zones because they are prepared to receive the assistance, but they are very raw in terms of treatment and recovery. So this is the type of spirits that are listening here to Instructor Druso presentation. Different from other books from Andre Luiz, where we see spirits, more advanced spirits in these lectures that Andre Luiz watches in the beginning, spirits already on the path of a more advanced path of evolution. Here we have really struggling spirits listening to what Druso is saying. So what happens to the spirits in this place, we study that on chapter 1. After they reach a certain level of understanding and recovery in this institution, they are either taken to a more evolved place, or they are brought to a new reincarnation, which is what Druso mentions here, right? First, he says that he's not different from them. He's also there, in his own learning. He's not different from them in terms of virtues. He talks to them as someone that have made the journey that they are starting to make. He says that he's also a spirit that is waiting to go back to a new reincarnation, and we'll see more of this later in this book. And it's very interesting when he talks about the redemptive prison of flesh that awaits all of us, which is the life in the physical world. He compares to a prison. Yes, we forget about our previous existences, and we are going to talk a lot more about this in this chapter, which is very interesting, connected to what we just studied, finished last Thursday in the book, the Spirit's book, where we studied forgetfulness of the past. This, of course, as usual, this complements the study from Thursday. So what he's telling us here is that on the journey from the grave, what we learn is that we are indissolubly tied to our own deeds. The name of the book, the title of the book is Action and Reaction. So it's clear that our action cause reactions, and this is both on the positive and negative aspects. When we talk about action and reaction, many times we think about the negative aspects of the reaction. You know, we cause harm to others, we have to face the consequences. But we have to remember, all our good actions, our positive actions, cause also positive reactions, cause positive consequences for us. And he says here, our action weave wings of freedom or shackles of imprisonment. So both aspects. And we owe our fate to no one but ourselves. This is one thing that we learn Spiritism, that it's many times is very hard for people to accept, to understand. People that come to Spiritism, they are looking for external sources of solution for their own problems. And in reality, we are the only instruments that can solve our issues. Of course, we have all the assistance we need, and we are open to receive from our guardian angels, from familiar spirits that are willing and ready to help and assist us. But we have to make the effort, we have to make to do the work. And when he talks about, then Druso talks about how do we reach that stage that we waste the time instilling sentiments and thoughts in others that we did not desire for ourselves. So we went against the golden rule, to do unto others what we would like others to do unto you. So with that, we sowed a vast crop of hatred and persecution through cruelty and pride. Again, selfishness, which is pride and selfishness, which are the two poisons that we all carry within us, that causes so much pain, so much suffering for ourselves and for those around us on our evolutionary path. And he talks about directly to those spirits, right? That many believe that the transition from the grave will be a miraculous cleansing that will free our spirits. And then they awake in this, and the subtle body, the perispiritual body that they have there in the spiritual world, with the diseases, the ills that we have nourished inside us. Meaning, the perispirit carries all the consequences of what our actions, mentally and physically, whatever we have done to our physical body. So all the links to the past remain alive. All the misguided emotions and aversion binds us to incarnate and discarnate fellow spirits. Interesting, many of them presenting more serious and constraining imbalances than our own, and we'll see more about this later in this chapter. And then he, before he pauses, he says, how can we walk the path of angels with our feet shackled to the earth, where humans accuse us of wrongdoings, thereby immersing our memories in the darkness? Meaning, we are connected to those that we cause harm, that we cause sufferings, and we cannot move forward until we repair those mistakes we made, the harm we caused to others. Okay, Elmo, anything here to comment?
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I was having problem with my audio. The very second page, when before he starts his speech, he says, let's continue our conversation regarding courage. And the courage is there towards reincarnation, because it says, I am too a fellow spirit waiting to go back. So all this talk of him now, it seems to bring to those individuals the necessity, the importance, and the value of going back. Which leads me to believe that these spirits are not all so raw, so bad, if they're able to get to understand this concept of going back, of reincarnation. We don't know how far ahead after this talk they will be ready to go back, or they initiate the process of go back. But these are the spirits that, in my perception here, that already have a degree of understanding to participate in this kind of conversation. There is not such raw, ignorant spirits. I don't think Druso, we do have this conversation with spirits who are not even able to understand those concepts. And to understand those concepts, it's already a pretty good sign that spirits are not all that ignorant.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Zoraida, let's continue.
Okay, yes. Druso made a short pause, and after a significant gesture, as if pointing to the tormented landscape outside, he proceeded in a moving tone.
Our shelter of work and hope is surrounded by infernal suffering.
How many souls there are out there who have become petrified in rebelliousness and indiscipline and have gone too far in self-degradation. Heaven is victory, but it does not improve itself. The divine law is founded on inexorable justice and applies equally to everybody. For that reason, our conscience reflects either the darkness or the light of our individual creations. Light clears our vision and unveils the road ahead. Darkness blinds us and chains us to the prison of our wrongs. The spirit in harmony with the higher designs can see the next horizon and walks courageously and serenely ahead in order to cross it. However, those who misuse their free will and reason, breaking the currents of the divine blessings, shape darkness around themselves. They isolate themselves in dreadful nightmares and are thus incapable of going any further. Therefore, in defining our own particular situation, we could say that we are souls caught between the light of sublime aspirations and the fog of appalling death. As a restarting of the learning experience, reincarnation is a concession from the heavenly goodness, and we must take advantage of it for our indispensable redemption. Of course, we will continue to suffer the effects of our ties to our accomplices and partners in intemperance and immoderation.
For a long time, but by means of new opportunities for work in the physical arena,
we can redo our destiny and liquidate heavy debts, and above all, sow new crops of love and dignity, understanding, and spiritual growth. By submitting to the workings of laws prevailing in the physical realm, we will have the fortune to meet up with our old enemies under the veil of temporary forgetfulness, thereby facilitating the precious opportunity to make amends. Therefore, the task of making them our friends will depend on us, because by bearing their incomprehension and hostility with humility and love, we will sublimate our sentiments and thoughts, creating new qualities of life eternal in our souls. Taking advantage of the instructor's pause, I looked around and saw that everyone in the audience was listening to him, immersed in elevated thought. Some of the patients had tears in their eyes, while others exhibit the rapt faces of those amidst consolation and hope. Druso, too, sensed the effect of his words on the comforting audience and continued, "We are spirits in debt. We must do everything possible for our renewal. Let us begin to articulate redemptive and spiritually constructive ideas from here on out so that we can rebuild our future. Let us be willing to forgive those who have offended us with the sincere purpose of asking forgiveness from our own victims."
Cultivating prayer and serving our neighbor, let us acknowledge the good spirit who helps us in hard times.
Challenging us to put forth a greater effort. Gathering all the possibilities within our reach, let us spread the help of our prayers and the concourse of our fraternal hand in the providence of darkness and pain that surround us. That is how we can prepare for our return to the battlefield in the physical realm, where the Lord will give us the blessing of a new body to help us forget evil and soar the good. For us, heirs of a repressible past, reprehensible past, the rim of physical form symbolizes the exit door from the hell we have created. Overcoming our moral infirmities and extinguishing all pernicious habits by triumphing over ourselves, we will purify the qualities of our spirit so that in uplifting ourselves, we may extend our friendly hands to those who remain stuck in the mire of misfortune. We who have erred in the darkness, we tormented travelers in suffering, we who know the wasteland of ice and torment of fire in our oppressed souls, could we find a greater happiness than to ascend a few steps in heaven in order to safely descend into hell to save those we love the most? Lost today, just as we ourselves were lost in the past in the caves of misery and death. Dozens in the audience looked at one another in wonder and happiness. By now, the mentor was surrounded by a soft light radiating from his chest area in the opulence scintillations.
I glanced at Hilario and noticing his tear-clouded eyes, I tried to stifle my own emotion.
The instructor was not speaking like somebody teaching only in theory. His voice was imprinted with the infliction of someone who had experienced enormous pain, and he addressed the humble spirits gathered there as if they were all dear children of his heart. Let us beseech the Lord, he continued movingly, to grant us strength for victory, a victory that will be born within us for greater understanding. Only then, by paying the price of sacrifice and readjustment, will we receive our passport to freedom.
Thanks, Red.
Okay.
So as he continues here, he talks about the place they are, right? Our shelter of work and hope is surrounded by infernal suffering, meaning all the spirits around that we learn about them on chapter 1. And he tells them that heaven is there for us, but heaven does not impose itself. Our conscience reflects the darkness or the light of our own individual creations. We are consequences of our own path. We face now the challenges and the rewards that we created for ourselves. Now, how do we see the road ahead? If we are carrying our own light, we can see it clears our vision and opens the road ahead. But if we are immersed in our own suffering and guilty and struggles and all the dark energies surrounding us, it chains us to the prison of our wrongs. We cannot see the road ahead. So the importance of being in harmony with the higher designs, because then we can walk serenely ahead. But those that are misusing their free will and reason, they isolate themselves in dreadful nightmares and are incapable of going any further. It's very interesting when he says that we are souls caught between the light of sublime aspirations and the fog of appalling death, meaning these are spirits that are aware of the road to redemption, that it exists, are not spirits that see no no light of hope. These are those that are outside. The spirits are there. As I almost said, they already have some understanding of the road ahead. They are still in the very beginning of the road ahead, but they have some understanding. They are souls caught between the light of sublime aspirations and the fog of appalling death, meaning they have so much to repair, but they already have some glimmer of hope. And he says, we will continue to suffer the effects of our ties to our accomplices and partners in crime. But with a new reincarnation, submitting to the workings of laws prevailing in the physical realm, we will have the fortune to meet up with old enemies. This is very important here. Sometimes when we find people that we struggle to accept, to entertain, and we have very hard time understanding their own limitations. Many times we ask ourselves, why do I have to have these people around me? And here Druso says we have the fortune to meet up with our old enemies under the veil of temporary forgetfulness. And we discussed a lot about this on Thursday, right? We actually read some passages from Emmanuel talking about this temporary forgetfulness of the past when we come to a new reincarnation, the necessity of forgetting about it. So we have sort of a clean slate to repair and to make amends with the enemies of the past. He says the task of making them our friends will depend on us. Again, we are responsible for our own actions, because by bearing their incomprehension and hostility with humility and love, we will sublimate our sentiments and thoughts, creating new qualities on the eternal life of our souls. Very important here as we face difficult times, not only amongst ourselves and our friends, families, but with the environment we live in, with so much differences, so much fight between different sides of religious, political, and all the aspects of life. We need to bear their incomprehension and hostility with our humility and love. That's the only way to sublimate our sentiments and thoughts, creating new qualities on our journey to more improved spirits. We must do everything possible for our renewal. Druso continues. Forgive those who offended us with the sincere purpose of asking forgiveness from our own victims. Meaning, we're not only here to learn to live with our enemies, but we need to learn to forgive them, sincerely forgive them, so we can humbly ask for forgiveness for our own faults. So let's use prayer, the importance of prayer here. He reinforces how that's how we can prepare for our return to the battlefield in the physical realm, as he says here. Again, the understanding of reincarnation is it's there for those spirits that are there. And he talks about the realm of physical form symbolizes the exit door from the hell we created for ourselves. And then he talks about the rewards of succeeding in this journey, because then we'll find a greater happiness as we ascend a few steps, so we can safely descend into hell to save those we love the most. Again, we are only going to progress if we are able to help those that we have wronged. So, and in order to find them, sometimes in places lower than where we find ourselves, we need to have an understanding of our situation, an acceptance of our limitations, and the preparedness to help them. One thing that we mention over and over again, and we talk about with spirits on our Monday mediumship meetings, is they have to prepare themselves to be able to be with their loved ones and to help their loved ones, to help others. But in order to do that, we need to prepare ourselves. We need to evolve. We need to work on our spiritual journey, because if we cannot live with ourselves in the common sense, right? I cannot live with myself. How can we help others? We need to be in peace with ourselves to be able to help others. So that's the task that these spirits have to face and their journey they are in. And then Andre Luiz talks about the soft light radiating from the mentor, signaling that he's talking from his heart. He's talking from the deep of his soul. When we really express ourselves with the love, with the true intentions of helping others, we radiate this light, this inner light that we all carry within ourselves, but that we block it with our own inferior actions. And then Andre Luiz have some emotions there. He talks about that the instructor is not speaking in theory. It's speaking from someone that had experienced enormous pain. We'll learn more about it later in the book. And he talks to the spirits like children of their heart. And he finishes by paying the price of sacrificing readjustment, we will receive the passport to freedom. That's when he finished his presentation, which is a very emotional one. Okay, Elmo, anything to add here?
No, João, thank you.
Any questions, comments from anyone? Okay, so let's continue, Zoraida.
Okay. When the director of the institute finished his address, a woman with a sad face got up, walked over to us, and asked him in tears, "My friend, forgive me for interrupting. When can I leave for the terrestrial realm with my son, Paulo? I visit him in the darkness as often as I can. He neither sees nor hears me. He is unaware of his moral misery and continues to be authoritarian and proud. But I don't see him as my enemy. He is an unforgettable son. How can love contract such an enormous debt?" "Yes," said Druso, a little resistant. "Love is a divine force that we frequently degrade. We take it pure and simple from the life with which the Lord has created us, and with it we invent hate and imbalance, cruelty and remorse, and this strands us indefinitely in the darkness. As far as the Lord is concerned, it is nearly always out of love that we get entangled in mazes of bitterness, love misinterpreted and misused."
As if emerging from a quick escape of his inner world, he touched the tormented woman's hands and said with a new sparkle in his eyes,
"We think you will be able to join your son very soon in the valuable undertaking of redemption. According to the information we have, we won't remain stuck much longer in his current limitations. Let's be calm and trusting." As for the poor soul withdrew with a smile of patience, the instructor explained, "Our sister possesses excellent moral qualities, but she was unable to direct her maternal sentiment toward her son, now lavishing in the darkness. She instilled ideas of unhealthy superiority in him, and they crystallized in his mind, encouraging him to rebelliousness and brutality. The wretch was a social tyrant, and after the death of his soul, he was drawn unawares into the dreadful darkness. His poor mother feels responsible for having sown the illusions that ruined his life and is now trying hard to get him out of there. Will she succeed? Will she succeed? Asked Hilario. Yes, she will, Druso replied, convinced. But how? Our friend softened the fibers of her moral responsibility in a life that was too comfortable. She will reincarnate in an extremely poor environment, where as a needy young woman, she will receive
the son she harmed in her former fantasies as a superficial, well-to-do woman. In their want of financial resources, she'll be an inspiration of heroism and courage for him,
giving him a new vision of life and purifying his energies in the forge of difficulty and suffering. And will they be victorious? Asked my companion again, obviously intrigued. Victory is a felicity we all hope for them. And what if they fail in the struggle? Then, of course, they will return in an even worse state to the precipice that surround us, said the instructor with a significant intonation. After a sad smile, Druso added, when we are born again in the flesh as spirits in depth, each of us brings to the human environment a tiny bit of the heaven we hope to gain in a big mantle of the hell we made for ourselves. When we don't have enough strength to ascend to heaven through the opportunities it confers on us, we return to the hell that beckons us from our past. Our host was going to continue, but an unsteady elderly man came up to us and said humbly, "Ah, my instructor, I'm tired of working in these harsh conditions. I've been bringing crazy and rebellious patients to this asylum for 20 years now. When will I get my new body so that I can rest in the forgetfulness of the flesh near my loved ones?"
Druso patted his head and answered with tenderness, "Don't give up, my son. Be comforted. We too have been bound to this place for many years by the demands of our duties.
Let's continue to serve with joy. The day of change will be determined by the Lord." With sad eyes, the old man became silent.
Thanks."
Mhm.
So when he finishes the presentation here, this woman with a sad face gets up from the audience, walks towards them, and asks when she can reincarnate. She has a son that is in worse condition, that cannot see or hear her. And here is a very interesting thing. We talked about it, and we can think of Andre Luiz when he spent the 8 years in the lower zones, as we see in Nosso Lar. And when he first meets his mother in Nosso Lar, he asks her, "Where were you all this time?" And she says, "I was there, ready to help you, but you wouldn't see me or hear me." Again, it's our own openness to the help that we need to receive that is going to propitiate the help to come to us. Clearly here, he's unaware of his moral misery and continues to be authoritarian and proud in the lower zones. Remember Gregorio, the team that worked with Gregorio? We can, in the book Liberation, we can see the signs of those spirits there, the type of spirits that Paulo still is, right? Struggling and probably following orders and giving orders to others, and continue to carry these characteristics that he had in the physical world. But she says, of course, even the most evil spirits have those that love them, especially their mothers. And Gregorio was saved and rescued by the work of his mother, as we study in the book Liberation. And here, the mother saying that she, of course, doesn't see him as an enemy. He's the son. She loves him. But she asks, how out of love could I contract such an enormous debt? And then it's a very interesting explanation from Druso that we all carry love inside of us. The divine is a divine force that we frequently degrade. So he said, we take it pure and simple from the life which the Lord has created us, and then we invent hate and imbalance. We use love, we misuse love, transforming it in selfishness and pride, and by abusing the love in many cases, we create enemies, hatred, and the difficulties that that come to us on our journeys. How many, when we read these romances, spiritual romances, right, and we see the consequences, what happened to these spirits, out of it all started with love, right? A couple, one that loved the other very much, but with a selfish love, that ended up committing a crime, ended up abusing of their love, and in the end creates enemies, creates all these serious consequences. Love misinterpreted and misused. It's nearly always out of love that we get entangled in mazes of bitterness. Again, love is such a difficult word for us to discuss, because we have a limited understanding of love. I always talk about the Greek definitions of love, that they have 7 different definitions, words for love, right? But here, it all origins. The origin is love, but it's the misuse of love, the misinterpretation of love, that makes us create complications for ourselves. In the case of this woman, it's out of excessive love. So it's interesting when Druso describes her, she possesses excellent moral qualities. So the first question that comes to our mind is, what is she doing there in mention of peace if she has moral qualities? Shouldn't she be in a more in a better place? Well, she has excellent moral qualities, but what is she carrying with her? Tremendous guilt. So the guilt that she carries is what makes her find herself in the place that she is. And the guilt is because she understands the way she raised him is what causes him to be the way he is now, crystallized in his mind the unhealthy superiority that she instilled in his thoughts, that encouraged him to rebelliousness and brutality. He describes her life as a comfortable life, and she raised this son with love, but with all the protection and with all the misguided instructions of who he was and how he should behave in society, without giving him the proper tools to deal with his life. And in the end, he became a social tyrant. And of course, after the death of the physical body, he goes into these places that he finds himself. So the mother feels guilty and responsible, and that's why she finds herself there, because there, in this place, she's probably closer to the darkness that he is right now, and she can see him even if he doesn't recognize her. And then Druso talks a little bit about this, if they are going to succeed when they have a new reincarnation, where she will be born in extremely poor environment. So she misused the relative wealth that she had in the previous incarnation, and now she needs to struggle. She needs to really go through very difficult life, so she will have a son that will see her struggles and her fight to raise him as an example and an inspiration for him, that will give him a new vision of life and will purify his energies. And it's interesting when Hilario asks, will they be victorious? And Druso says, victory is the felicity we all hope for them. Again, they have their free will. She has her free will, the son has his free will, so they will have the opportunity, the right place, the right opportunities for them to grow. But they may fail, and what happens if they fail? They go back to the spiritual world in an even worse state, to the precipices that surround us, meaning to the places outside the mansion of peace that we saw descriptions in the first chapter. And then Druso says, we bring to the human environment, to a reincarnation, that we start a tiny bit of the heaven we hope to gain, the hopes, and a big mantle of the hell we made for ourselves, the consequences, the reaction of our own actions that we have to deal with and overcome. If we don't have enough strength to ascend to heaven, through the opportunity it confers on us, we return to the hell that beckons us from our past. And then an older man approaches, and he's been working then for 20 years, and he's tired and he's complaining. And when I will get this new body, we clearly see he's not ready for a new reincarnation. He hasn't still accepted and understood the necessity of the work he's doing there. It's by accepting and incorporating the necessity of helping others, of doing the work, is when he will be ready for a new reincarnation. And Druso has only some consoling words for him. Don't give up, be comforted, let's continue to serve with joy. The day of change will be determined by the Lord. Actually, the day of change will be determined by himself when he changes his attitude and he understands that the work that he's doing is for himself and not for what he calls of these crazy and rebellious patients that he's been bringing to the asylum for 20 years. He clearly hasn't still understood the necessity and the rewards of the work he's doing there. Okay, Elmo, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think we need to be reminded here that the son is not responsible for the errors of the fathers, as known by Ezekiel, and also the parents are not responsible for the errors of the offsprings, right? We are responsible for what you do. So if you take in consideration this case of this woman and assume that the son received whatever he received in terms of teachings, instruction from the woman, but have redirected himself through other means. I don't know, maybe he met a girlfriend who was a spiritist, start taking his present, he redirect his state of mind and his behaviors and become let's say, a good citizen. The woman would still have to deal with the consequences of her actions, regardless of the direction the son took. Because the son took a direction that is equal to what he received for her, they will be reunited and go through this difficulty. I just need to say that to make sure that this woman is not reincarnating in a difficult situation because of what happened to the son. It's because of what she has done herself, regardless of the direction the son had took. And the son will be in the same difficult situation for the decisions he made himself. She carries responsibility for not being the good artisan to reshape the character of that individual, and especially at the young ages, as parents' responsibilities, right? And on the second case of the old man, you see here that it's at least those individuals receiving those letters of death, at least 20 years already being rescued from worse situations. So individuals who have been working with Russo in that place for quite some time, at least 20 years for what we see there, and see how carefully it is, this process of reincarnation is, that really will wait the right time to provide us the absolutely all possibilities of success for that reincarnation plan. I think this 20 years there is very significant in my eyes.
Yeah. And again, it's interesting, right? Because we see that I was reading about this patient. I was remembering from Nosso the woman that was there always complaining about the work that she was doing that was never good enough for her. She went to Andre Luiz, was there at the room of Clarencio when she enters and complains about one thing, about the other, that one work or the other. So you see that even in Nosso Lar, you find, it's not a uniform team of spirits that are there. We have spirits with different levels of evolution. It's the same range of evolution, but with different aspects. We are all individuals, and there are no two individuals that are equal to one another. We are all in different paths of evolution, in the same range, yes, but with our own peculiarities, right? And we see these two very different cases that are in that institution. The woman that has a moral value, but is still, she's only focused on helping her son and feeling guilty. And this old man that, again, elderly man. First thing here, don't we go back to the spiritual world and present ourselves with the appearance that we feel more comfortable from our previous incarnation? Yes, eventually. But this man clearly is still carrying the impressions of when he discarnated as an elderly man. He hasn't been able to work on his own mind to find himself with a better appearance, in a sense, right? Anything else here? Any questions, comments? Okay, Zoraida, let's continue. You're on mute, Zoraida.
Sorry. The instructor rang a little bell signaling the audience that they could engage in conversation. A young man with a friendly expression approached us, and after greeting us affectionately, said anxiously, "Dear instructor, listening to your learned and ardent words left me wondering about the enigmas of memory. Why this forgetfulness after our physical death? If I had other existences before this one, whose mistakes I'm now trying to correct, why can't I remember them? Before I left for the physical realm on the pilgrimage where I was giving my present name, I must have left good friends behind in the spirit world, just as those who traveling before one continent to another often leave behind loved ones who don't forget them. Why this anesthesia that keeps me from remembering the friends I usually must have had?" Well, the instructor remarked wisely, spirits who rightly attend to their duties in their physical life do, in fact, peacefully recovering their memory after leaving the dense body. They re-enter communion with the noble and worthy ties that wait for them in the higher life so that they can continue their respective work of spiritual growth and sublimation. On the other hand, for those of us with troubled consciences, the death of the corporeal vehicle does
not mean liberation.
Right. We may lose a physiological instrument, but we remain chained to the invisible prison of our guilt. And guilt, my friend, is always a black cloud of darkness eclipsing our side. Regarding our moral failures, our mnemonic faculties are sort of like photographic plates, which, if not well protected, will be ruined. The instructor paused briefly and then continued. Let's think of the mind as being a lake. If the water is still and clean, the light of the sky will be reflected on it without distortion. But if the water is always in turmoil, the images are lost to the turbulence of the moving waves, especially when the muck on the bottom comes up to the surface. Strictly speaking, here in the lower zones, we are a long ways from being spiritually renewed, despite being discarnate. The inquirer listened to him, visibly surprised. He was about to ask for some more questions, but Druso, anticipating it, emphasized in the friendly tone. Observe this reality in yourself. Notwithstanding your current studies and despite the sublime hope now dwelling in your heart, your mind is still bound to the sights and landscapes that you supposedly left behind after death. On the pathway of the spirit life, you still identify with the dark reminiscences that remain in the past. Home, family, and commitments imperfectly kept. All this is ballast that keeps your mind geared toward the physical world, where our debts demand sacrifice and payment. True, true, agreed the young man bitterly, but the instructor continued. Under hypnosis, our memory can go back and recover for a few moments. However, this is forcing things. In everything, it is always better to accept the wisdom of nature. We need to free the divine mirror of our mind that lies under the muck of repentance, remorse, and guilt. And it will reflect the sun with all the splendor of its purity. Druso was going to continue, but the arrival of a co-worker compelled us to end the conversation.
Okay, thanks, Sarayda. So here is where we go back to what we studied on Thursday, forgetfulness of the past, right? So this young man approached them and talks about why this forgetfulness after our physical death. We talked Thursday and we studied forgetfulness of the past when we reincarnate. The reasons that it happens when we reincarnate, the need for it, the divine law, why we do it. We went through a manual studying the reasons for it, the justifications. Again, if it's the natural law, it's the best, the best avenue for us. If it is there, it exists for a reason. But this young man is asking why the forgetfulness after our physical body, meaning he goes back to the spiritual world, but he doesn't remember the previous existences. And he's asking, why is that? Why he doesn't remember the past beyond his last physical incarnation? Very reasonable saying, if I'm trying to correct the mistakes, if I cannot correct them, previous to my incarnation, I must have left good friends behind in the spiritual world. And why this amnesia keeps me from remembering the friends I had. And Druso explains to him, spirits who rightly attend to their duties in their physical life and go back peacefully to the spiritual world will recover their memory after leaving their dense body. Again, on a need-to-know basis, as we discussed. They re-enter in communion with the noble and worthy ties that wait for them in the higher life, so they can continue the work of spiritual growth and sublimation. Again, because those that go back to the spiritual world in good mental conditions, moral and intellectual awareness and evolvement, we may be able to reconnect with loved ones from previous existences, from loved ones, and remember passages from our previous existences, if this can help us on our journey. But as Druso says here, for those of us with troubled consciences, the death of the corporeal vehicle does not mean liberation. We remain chained to in the invisible prison of our guilt. And guilt is always a black cloud of darkness, eclipsing our sight. So he talks about our moral failures, that our mnemonic faculties are sort of like photographic plates, for those that remember how pictures were developed in the old times before we had all our phones with the pictures, right? And the photographic plates will be ruined if not well protected. Remember, we had to develop them in the dark. The light will harm them. So normally they will have these cameras of revealing the pictures and then he makes a very interesting comparison with the lake, right? The reflection of the sky, the light of the sky. If the lake, the water is still and clean, it will be a good reflection. But if there is a turmoil, if the water is not clean, the reflection is lost. We are back in the spiritual world. We are not reflecting a good reflection of the light that comes towards us. We are darkening the light that comes to us. And he talks to this guy, your mind is still bound to the sights and landscapes that you left behind after the physical death. So he's too much connected to his previous incarnation, to his immediate incarnation that he left, to be able to open more his vision to his life as eternal spirit. So he still identify with the dark reminiscences that remain in the past, home, family, commitments, imperfectly kept, meaning he's too connected to his incarnation, the physical life that he just left behind, to be able to expand his vision. And it's interesting when we talked a little bit about regression, therapy of life regression, and how Spiritism views it as a necessity only in terms of severe traumas, not as a means of curiosity. And he talks here about hypnosis, that memory can go back and recover for a few moments. However, this is forcing things. Again, it's going against the natural law. It's always better to always accept the wisdom of nature, the wisdom of the divine law, of the natural law. We need to free the divine mirror of our mind that lies under the muck of repentance, remorse, and guilt, so we can reflect the sun with its purity. And that's the end of the chapter. Any additional comments here, Elmo?
I'm just amazed by what we know, but you have an absolute proof here, how life is just a continuation of things. One time with a physical body, and then without a physical body, and go back and forth, but our life is the same. In these two paragraphs, Andre Luiz covered the whole chapter we just finished studying in our Spirit's book, and know the questions and philosophical discussion about forgetfulness of the path that you have as incarnate, we have as discarnate. It's exactly the same if you put both side to side. Why can I remember? Would it be better for me to resolve my problems if I know what my problems are? Exactly on both sides. And the answer for the question is exactly the same as discarnate and as incarnate. And can some people have this remembrance? Yes. And the answer is exactly the same as well. Those who are more elevated, those who have a more clean conscience and ability to deal with their past, who you see as discarnate and as incarnate. So it's exactly the same. If you put both side to side, you're going to see the same questions and the same answers for the incarnate and discarnate. I find that amazing.
And amazing that we are studying it one after the other, right?
Exactly right.
And more amazing still, Elmo. This Saturday, the lecture, the talk on the United States Spiritist Federation by Dr. Vicente Pessoa, which is a very well-known Spiritist doctor in Brazil, is going to be children who remember their past lives.
Oh, this coming Saturday?
This coming Saturday.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Nothing happens by chance, right?
Nothing.
Yeah, so we are going to see him presenting. I'm sure he's going to bring some of Dr. Ian Stevenson's books, but so this is going to be Saturday, this coming Saturday through the United States Spiritist Federation Saturday talks. Okay, any comments, questions here on what we went through? Nope. Okay. So just I'm just going to share here. We just launched 2 new books in English, which is The Consoler by Francisco Xavier by the Spirit Emmanuel, which is a book of questions and answers, a beautiful book, very enlightened, and is really worth reading it. And the other book is Words of Eternal Life. This is part of the Living Spring collection. We've been using Living Spring for our Mondays studies, and when we finish Living Spring, we are going to use this book, Words of Eternal Life. It's one of the 5 books, together with Our Daily Bread, The Truth, the Way, the Truth, and the Life, and the one other book that is not yet translated called Vineyards of Light. But so if you want to purchase these books, you can go to our website there, sgny.org, and you can find and search for it. And if you need a link, you can ask me directly, okay? This coming Sunday, next Sunday, which will be the 2nd Sunday of the month, we are going to be studying the Jesus in the Home, right? Elmo chapter 2, I believe.
3. We
3.
did 1 and 2 last week.
So chapter 3, yes. Only 3 or 3 and 4?
Oh, 3 and 4.
3 and 4, okay. Jesus in the Home, chapters 3 and 4. Okay. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, Sarita, for reading for us today, and everyone who is here present. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks to be together again for our studies of the book Action and Reaction, Chapter 2, The Instructor's Comments. Our actions cause negative and positive consequences. In the spiritual world, suffering spirits who are open to receiving healing and guidance will be taken to a place to prepare for a new incarnation. This journey provides opportunity for a plan to repair the harm that was caused to others and to the self. This new road to redemption is another chance to meet the challenges and to make amends in the physical world. We need to take direct responsibility with humility, understanding, love, and forgiveness in order to repair the mistakes of past actions. The divine and natural law provides a veil of forgetfulness and sublimation as needed. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, and the workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. May we go forth right now and remind ourselves to be beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.